Righto. Item 9 is political working groups arising out of the annual budget. Decision making. During the budget, we agreed that we would consider establishing some working groups to inform the long-term plan, and I'm interested in here receive that people feel that we have set it off in a slightly different journey. I'm proposing we set up these working groups so they can report back by the end of September to inform the LTP. I don't really want to set and train yet another series of bureaucracy, so I'll give my life for a bit. The topics that have been raised so far include Auckland Council investments regarding which there's already been a start decision, legislative change being sought for regional organisations in Auckland Transport, stadium venues, which would consider recommendations to address the current lack of affordable credible plan for our stadia. For this working group, the government and Tātaki Auckland Unlimited have expressed an interest in appointing a member. In fact, the Minister of Sport really wanted me to sort of appoint members to various things where he was feeling a bit uncomfortable. Rather than trying to squeeze us all in now, as Councillor Hill's itching to get his committee started, councillors can send expressions of interest to me by Monday the 3rd of July. If you want to be on these, and I'm interested in, the Deputy and I will have a look at the makeup, and the IMSB will also be invited to nominate a member to each party. Please send expressions of interest to me by email, setting out your experience and interest in the particular working party, along with any conflicts which you may have. That's particularly important these days. If you accidentally own part of Eden Park, please let me know. These are not decision-making groups, but are able to consider different options to inform our LTP decision-making. Again, as you'll have seen, we're trying to have a broadly inclusive, wide-ranging debate over the LTP, but it still has to land on a document which fits the rather prescriptive rules that are given to us as local government members. So, in essence, what I'm suggesting is that if you're interested, let me know. And at the same time, you'll recall that we're reviewing the size and number and composition of our committees, which have had half a year so far. Some have worked pretty well and some haven't quite worked quite so well, so we're having a chew over those as well. So the purpose is to establish this. I'm quite happy to take questions and discussion about this because it's fairly loose. And it has been discussed quite a lot in the LTP, and I do encourage people to show up at the LTP in person because we're making progress. Councillor Filipina.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, there are some issues in regards to this report. I'm not going to complain about us getting it this morning, but I do have some questions. Are the questions to you, Chair, or to you?
Just make them to the room, and if it's me, I'll answer them. If it's somebody else, the staff will answer them. If it's Jim, he'll answer them.
Okay, so I think one of them is that in your bullet point around external groups, and it mentions in this particular one that central government, for example, what other external groups will you be considering? I'm hoping that it's not, but it's going to be your call if these working groups get set up, that it's not lobbying groups or any other groups. I just needed to establish that just to get the clarification, Chair.
Well, I wasn't looking at getting any, actually. It's just in that particular case for the stadium, we've been meddling with it for quite a while. It's been quite well publicised. It came to us from Tātaki, who have had trouble getting the single stadium operator thing going. And at a meeting when I was discussing transport things with the Minister of Finance, who was also the Minister of Sport, he actually said he'd like to have a say in that. And so I didn't actually seek those, but if they're out there, it's not an opportunity for lobbying groups or people either purchasing airport shares or selling airport shares or opposing airport shares. It's just a way of getting those particular things that have been raised during the debate and respond to it. So I'm not really looking to have anybody other than
Look,
those.
Chair, I think central government is a good move because you've covered that in some of it. But when you see the sentence, for example, from central government, I then had a sort of,
I don't want a Ministry of Sport arising. It was just the Minister of Sport himself did say that he has to appoint people to, in particular one's very narrow, it was about Eden Park, but he actually is in Wellington and doesn't really know. And he said, cool. Would you like to?
No, thank you. I mean, central government, I agree. Chair, there's also a question for me. Why wouldn't we, and I heard you say in your opening remarks that getting these workshops was something that we discussed during the annual plan and understand that. But because some of the topics you've mentioned in this particular agenda item, like Auckland Council investments, like the stadium and venues, that there I would have thought we could have at least tried to arrange for everybody to end up having an input in regards to that, instead of going through this expression of interest. And that got highlighted on the 8th and 9th in regards to the debate we had with the annual plan. So for me, around those, why wouldn't we just have a governing body workshop with those, at least those two particular ones? I know there's others, Chair.
Perhaps, sadly, you have missed the last two LTP meetings, but the way that we've been getting everybody's input is the people facilitating it. In fact, I thought they did quite a good job. I don't know what other people thought. But they chopped us up into little groups and sent us around. And so little groups seem to be working quite well, because every time you get 20 people around the room to discuss anything on their own, it's just such a job to process it. Councillor Dalton beside you has raised the point that we seem to be very formalised in how we debate things. Well, you have to be formalised to debate these, but we have deformalised the LTP things, and I gather the impression that most people thought it was quite good at this stage. So I encourage you to come to the next one and see how you feel about it.
So Chair, just to let you know what I've done is that I've contacted councillors to get their view on both those days, as you should, and I've done that. I've also arranged a meeting with Tamsin and with Toby to end up getting their feedback, because that's what I do as due diligence, Chair. So I've already contacted some councillors to get feedback on those two sessions. Chair, the other question that I have in regards to these workshops is, how do we avoid, and I'm going back to the debate around the Auckland plan, how do we avoid getting people on the working groups that you're looking at, that they're not people who are yes people to your agenda, Chair? Because as a result of that debate, I want to make sure that there is a mix of people. For example, if you're looking at Auckland Council investments, I'm hoping that there'll be some people who argued for full, for partial, but also for no sale on that working group. So I just want to avoid that perception.
The last thing I'd want is yes people around me.
Okay, thank you. So how do you
sure if there is one, actually?
Yeah, so I'll be interested. Sorry, Chair. I'll be interested in the Auckland Council investment one, but going through.
Yes, I'm sure you will, but I want people who know something about the subject.
I think I'm speaking at the moment.
All right.
Chair, the reason I'm saying this, Chair, is because I wish, especially for the Auckland Council investments, I would love to be on that working group, but having to go and give a CV to end up putting in, that's something I will consider, but I'll just let you know that from now. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Philippine. Councillor Ferry, please.
I'm quite keen for this, and there's a number of areas of interest that I have. I just want a little bit of, I I guess I just wanted to raise a flag a little bit for some of the workload implications. Some of us are dealing with, and this is not, although the floods hit the region, they hit some parts of the region harder than others. And some of us are on wards where we've got a lot of cases that we're dealing with as a result of the flooding, and a lot of community work to do. So I am just a little bit worried about what this might mean in terms of workload. I have to be honest, prior to the budget vote, I was really struggling to keep up with things and to do all the reading required and to attend all the meetings and listen to all the conversations and think things through. And I am a little bit concerned about whether I have capacity to put my hand up for some things that I really think I could give good input on. So I guess I just wanted to put that out there in terms of some of the workload challenges that some of us are under. Thank you.
Thank you for that very much, and I appreciate how hard you work on the things that you've got. And I think we've got a recess coming up, which I'm hoping most of us are going to catch up and read some of the documents. I'll be doing a quiz on our finance policy to see you've all read that. A very dry document, but I've got obscure interests and I did read it. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Mayor. And look, it's always difficult, you know, because this report only landed 40 minutes before the start of this meeting, and it's a bit of a...
Me too.
It's a bit of a skeletal report with your name on it, Mayor. But look, I'm okay. It's read quickly. And I have expressed to you, Mayor, that I think there do need to be some, you know, complementary work streams. So I do support that. The question then is, what are they? And that we've all bought into that and we agree on those work streams. So, Mayor, I've mentioned to you and your Chief of Staff that I'm interested in a revenue opportunities work stream, you know, something we haven't really tapped into, and I'm interested in contributing that, with your agreement, maybe even leading it. But there are other things, Mayor, that I've just caught up on here, and you've mentioned the stadiums discussion. Now, I would suggest no, we do not have a working group on the stadiums discussion. Definitely not. You've written a letter. We've all agreed to your letter, informing the statement of intent, your letter of expectation, and it makes it very clear to Tātaki Auckland Unlimited that our expectation is that they deliver, finally deliver, not deliberate for another year, on the stadium sort out, commonly referred to as a stadium strategy. We've asked them to deliver a plan for the 4 major stadiums. Not to keep talking about it, to actually deliver a plan. So if we start getting in the way now, we are back to where we have been for now years of being unresolved on the stadiums. Now, I feel pretty strongly about that because it's been politicians getting in the way of resolving this. It's been this group, current and former, that have got in the way of resolving the problem with the stadiums. Now, if we're going to drop ourselves back in there again, I can only see those barriers reappearing, and we'll be sitting around this table in another year going, we must sort out these stadiums. I don't think we're sending very contradictory messages here. We're actually asking our CCO to not just develop a strategy, we're actually now saying in a letter of expectation, deliver it. And that's where we should be putting our energy. Back to Tātaki Auckland Unlimited and say, deliver it, not putting ourselves back in the frame politically at this stage. That's my take there. Thanks, Mayor.
That's very good points. This item is about getting a process. It's not actually a total list of what they might be. I've just listed some that have popped up, and I have heard the revenue one, and there might be some that like stadium, where perhaps we decide not to do it. It's also to encourage, there's probably others, and it's partially come out of the first 2 meetings of the LTP group, where we all in various corners, and some people suddenly unearthed things that they were terribly interested in, and we don't all have the same level of interest or experience in every bits and pieces around the table. You know, there's some things that you and I are very interested in, other things that other people aren't not remotely interested in, and vice versa, of course. So that was kind of, so this is about the process, and the process of that we want to do this, not build a bloody another bureaucracy, and get feedback from what you're interested in, what you've got skills about. That's kind of it. And so I imagine there'll be others in here that aren't here. I mean, I know there's a few zealots about regional parks that might want to have something or other as well. And so this is not a limited, these are examples, and you've probably chosen one which may not make the cut, and you've also suggested another one that may well emerge. And it's a way of kind of like formalising the way that Toby, the gentleman's name was, who's been taking us through this, he's been putting us in little groups and seeing in those little groups some people are really emerging enthusiasm about some things and real interest in it that most of us were unaware they might have actually had. So I think I'm very happy with your input, and thank you for that. Councillor Walker?
Entirely supportive of this process, and I think it's a really good move. It's frankly quite hopeless engaging in a long-term plan process when there's 20 of us and the mayor, and then if you bolt on 21 local boards, it's, you know, from the perspective of group dynamics and working stuff up, it just simply doesn't work. No commercial organisation would ever set up any apparatus like that to get anything done. Sure. So as I see it, these working groups aren't making decisions, they're working up information so that everybody's more informed and no one's excluded. And if you are busy, no doubt you can have a chat to some other councillors that are participating. I'd hope that we can get some external input from people, groups out there that may have information in a given area, and that helps to bring the cost down, and arguably may not cost us any money at all because we don't have all the answers. We can benefit significantly from external expertise. I'm really keen on getting a really good handle on development contributions, for example, that we just go over lightly. And there are major structural financial problems we've got there, and like Councillor Darby, I want to improve council's revenue if I can contribute in some small way. And like Councillor Turner, I'm hell-bent on finding far more efficiencies and much less wastage across this organisation through procurement and other means. And if we don't have a group that's focused on that and giving some oversight to it, I don't know how it's going to happen otherwise. And I would see that some of these working groups may have some time to move over many months, conceivably in advance of the long-term plan process, because it's all stuff that we need to give attention to. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that supportive stuff there. Councillor Furley, grumpy Councillor Furley.
Kia ora, thank you, Worship. Just a couple of questions. Firstly, because I'm enjoying the current process, will this mean that that current process that we're going through will stop, or is this in addition to it? Because I know that some people think it's a bit of a kumbaya, but I'm actually enjoying that.
No, it's actually sort of fallen out of the current process in a way. It's
so it'll still work alongside?
It's kind of like a little bit formalising the groups that are kind of emerging about things like that there. So it's just something that I've heard during the 2 agonising days of the debate, plus the 2 quite enjoyable afternoons about the LTP. There's emerging the need for little groups who are particularly interested in things, so that we benefit from that. It's supposed to be helpful, but if you're feeling it's not helpful, we'll stop it dead in its tracks.
Kia ora. Okay, thank you. And then just my second question, just picking up on something that Councillor Walker said, that no one is excluded. If we really, really want to be on one of those groups, can we have your assurance that we will not be excluded from that group?
No, they're open. I mean, for instance, if one emerges on contracting, which is something that both Councillor Turner and I have had a fair bit of experience on, that there might be, we'll do a bit of work on it, and then we'd probably come along to the LTP and share it with those people, and the people might find it's really interesting, join it or not. I know that Councillor Walker wanted to learn more about development contributions. Try paying them. It's amazing what you learn when you get a bill for many, many thousands of dollars for development contributions. You actually start reading very carefully what they're about.
Kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Your Worship. I, for one, have really welcomed the opportunity that this might provide and have enjoyed enormously the 2 days that we have spent thus far on giving consideration to the framework for the LTP. On the successful boards that I have been part of, there has always been a breaking down into smaller groups of both interest and experience. And so it seems logical to me, as this council matures, that we have the opportunity in a governance sense to actually give some direction in those things that we might be able to add value. I, as some of you know, feel very sad that our CEO is leaving us. In fact, I think this will be his last governing body today. I would really ask him, through you, for his reflections on how this might work effectively with staff from what he has seen thus far in terms of policy formation in moving forward. So, Jim, if you have thoughts on this, I wonder if you'll share them with us.
Oh, thanks, Councillor. Look, the only reflection I would make is that, as a number of councillors have observed, it's very difficult to even arrange time with 21 councillors, let alone orchestrate and manage debate and process to get meaningful input to help guide staff work and advice. I think anything we can do to make the system a bit more dynamic and responsive will be helpful. So, you know, smaller working groups, smaller advisory groups that might not be the ultimate decision makers, but might be really helpful in terms of informing staff or setting direction in terms of the development of policy that allows staff to get on and do the work and bring it back through those committees back to the decision makers will be helpful, both in terms of effectiveness and certainly in terms of time and productivity.
Thank you for that. Your Worship, I'm happy to move this item if that's of assistance.
But you're welcome to do that. I've still got a couple of questions though. I've got Henderson and Watson. Watson, have you to go?
Comment,
No.
Mr Mayor, if that's okay. Oh, am I jumping ahead or not?
No.
Okay.
Shane Henderson, we're going west first.
Yay, that's good. Yeah, look, I just want to support the approach. I think it's really good, even for councillors in our practice, that we can devote our time and our energies towards smaller things that are bespoke, that we can really focus on, laser focus and get some results done. You know, I do support the previous comments around revenue. I think we should be looking at a revenue subcommittee. I think would be really great. You know, for stadiums, for me, I'll declare, I asked for the Tātaki gig at the start of the term. I'm really, really into this kind of stuff. And I think that we do actually get a small group together to really laser focus on what's been a troublesome issue over many terms, and we just nail it. So yeah, I'd be happy to be involved and just throw that one out there. Thanks, Mayor.
Righto, now that's exactly the response that I'm looking for. Not a formal CV, just a text or an email to me saying, I'm really interested in this, I can really push it along, and I've got a bit of background that's associated with it. Enthusiasm is a wonderful thing. Councillor Watson, I hope we're not going to lose our enthusiasm from your input, but...
Most certainly not, Mr Mayor. I'm always a keen, enthusiastic supporter of all your initiatives. Well, nearly all of them.
Nearly all of them.
Aside from the big one.
It was bordering on
Aside
a
of the
joke.
big one, just stuff up. We'll leave that aside. I genuinely do want to endorse the approach that's been taken here, but to me it's a little bit reminiscent of Back to the Future. When I first started the council, there weren't so much working parties, but there were a number of smaller committees, much smaller committees covering such areas as arts, culture and heritage, Councillor Filipina, sport, parks and recreation, Councillor Fletcher, environment and climate change, Councillor Walker, community safety and development, Councillor Casey, and there was probably another ones. Now, the thing about these smaller committees were that largely they were people who wanted to be there, who were interested in the matter, and they covered off things to do with stadiums and regional parks. They were run very efficiently. They were very enjoyable to be part of. I can certainly remember with Councillor Filipina's committee finding out a lot more about the arts and culture part of the Auckland region. And to me, it was a retrograde step when under the customary false economy of, costing of running a committee, even though we had the space, we had the offices, we had the personnel, we had an artificial cost imposed that saw them go, and that's been a detrimental move. And I see in your initiative here, Mr Mayor, an attempt, while not going back to the good old days, at least providing that opportunity for people to get involved in areas that they have a bit of interest and perhaps hopefully even a little bit of expertise. So that's entirely desirable. As far as some of the other comments go about, and I think that the stadium venues or strategy was one point that was brought up there, and reference made to the undesirability of political involvement. I'm kind of glad there was some political involvement with those stadiums back then, Mr Mayor, because if it had been left to the bureaucrats at that time, Mount Smart, which had a beautiful new eastern stand created or constructed courtesy of the ARC, that will have gone, and instead there would have been a dirt speed track there. Yeah. Instead now we have two franchises playing out of Mount Smart, the NRL, the Warriors, go the Warriors, having a great season, and Moana Pacifica. So that intervention by bureaucrats there would have been entirely counterproductive. And that's the thing with stadiums, they change over time. So if we can get a little bit of expertise there and, and we can save money. North Harbour Stadium, if it had been left to the RFA stadium strategy, would have had a big covered roof and a new grandstand. I'm not sure the numbers at North Harbour Stadium would have justified that. So I think, far from political involvement being a negative, I think it's entirely desirable, Mr Mayor. It's resulted in better outcomes in the past, and I'm sure with the current crop of councillors and the various degrees of expertise they'll bring, it'll result in better results going forward. Yeah. So good on you, Mr Mayor.
Righto. Alf, don't take him as a yes person, but I'll probably have him on something. Righto. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Sorry, Your Worship.
Contrary? Carried. Oh.
Sorry, Your Worship, I thought we were on questions. Was it both? Because that's the way I'd only asked the questions, and I just wanted to say something, but because of the time, I can tell you it'd be only 30 seconds. If you allow
No, sorry, if you've got something to say, don't. I didn't mean to.
And I know Councillor Baker is timing me now. So you just when you're 25. So, Your Worship, I just want to say thank you for this. I had to ask the questions that I needed to. Yes, I'll be putting the one pager in. Might be only one sentence, but at least I'll be putting it in regards to the working groups, because I totally endorse what Councillor Watson was talking about, previous committees, and parks, arts and events was those that I ended up getting in 2011, and over the last 6 years with the environmental and community one. That's it. Thank you. Just endorse it.
Right. Sorry to have interrupted you and missed you, but I'm going to put that now. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, it's carried. Thank you very much. We haven't got the end, have we, by any chance? Yes. Righto. We've got to the end of the formal bit, but I'm going to ask Councillor Fletcher to raise her extraordinary item, which I'm pleased you did have the decency to wait till the end for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this is an extraordinary meeting, but the matter that I wish to raise is also extraordinary. And really unprecedented, and I think it's a matter for this governing body. I considered whether it was a matter for the Transport and Infrastructure Committee or the Planning Committee, but I believe that it is a matter for the governing body. I was shocked to discover yesterday, the 27th of June, that the Ministers of Finance and Housing, without any consultation with our community or the Auckland Council that I am aware of, have jointly directed Kāinga Ora to assess the potential establishment of the Auckland Light Rail project as a specified development project under the Urban Development Act of 2020, with the view to establishing 66,000 additional households along that route, which of course includes large tracts of area that have experienced ongoing flooding issues. Given the devastation to the communities and the businesses in this area from the deadly anniversary weekend floods, and a really devastated community, in fact we have another public meeting this evening, and if you are not already aware, the Albert Eden Puketapapa area was one of those that experienced severe flooding, and I think we had the highest number of stickered properties at that time. But the community are devastated. We are still waiting for certainty from the council here and from central government on compensation, on categorisations, on buyouts of affected property. This yesterday was an assault on our community. It is a betrayal of trust to this council and displays extraordinary arrogance by the government. Therefore, Your Worship, and I have actually emailed this through to Sandra. Sandra, have you had it? And could you put it up, please? I'm requesting that the Mayor, that you, sir, be directed to request that the Ministers of Finance and Housing put their direction to Kāinga Ora to assess the Auckland Light Rail Corridor as an urban development project on hold until the location of the route and stations for light rail is decided, and that consultation has taken place with affected communities along the route, and Council has completed the investigations it has carried out into the serious stormwater and flooding issues in the Miola catchment through which the light rail will pass, and I understand that Councillor Watson is willing to second this.
Yeah, I'm going to just say a little couple of things that I get Megan to this has cropped up all of a sudden. It's something that ultimately will refer to the planning committee, but at this particular stage, I'm very keen to have the views of the full governing body. It's just happened right when I got here. I know that Megan's going to talk about the impact it will have on the work that she is carrying out. I am, along with Councillor Darby, a sponsor for the light rail, and this morning I was rung by the chairperson of Kāinga Ora, and he explained that they're being asked to do this, and he felt that it's being driven by a thing called HUD, Housing Urban Development, and by the Minister, Ms Wood.
It's the Urban Development Act, as I understand it, 2020.
It's something which is going to take a while, but I think it's an affront to the Auckland Council that it's done this way. It's like a backdoor pushing of Kāinga Ora to be leading what was supposedly a transport problem. Councillor Darby, myself and the Maori members of the sponsorship group have tenaciously insisted that they are forced to seriously consider the light rail version rather than the Kāinga Ora driven tunnel, and we've already been asked to approve the positions of the stations, which is a backdoor way of approving the tunnel, and so this seems to be a third one of these ones. And one of the things that I campaigned and got a huge, strong response from everywhere was Auckland need to be able to make decisions about Auckland. The chair of Kaingaora, who is a former cabinet minister, has also noticed that never before have Wellington bureaucrats been so influential in things outside Wellington as they are now. And in his time, when I also worked alongside him in the previous roles, it wasn't like that. And so I'm going to get Megan to point out the rather deleterious impact that this could happen on the work that she is carrying out. But I'll take a few questions, and with a bit of a debate about this, I really would like to be put in a position, which this accidentally does, and there's been no coercion. I didn't know what you were going to say. That the Ministers of Finance and Housing understand completely that this is not how you deal with the biggest city in New Zealand. This is not partnership. This is a bombing run. And so I personally think that it's not the way that we should be doing things in Auckland. Auckland has to be able to tell Wellington what we want in transport and what they should be paying for, not the other way around. Now I'm going to ask Megan.
Your Worship, as a courtesy, I just want to let on that I put questions to Megan last night when I found out that this was the case, and I have taken in faith what I have been told, and that is that you had no awareness of this, and Megan has, none of our officers had any awareness of this, and also you understand this is a community. If you think of those areas around Gribblehurst where there has been incredible flooding that is already traumatised with uncertainty over things, and then to introduce further uncertainty is just unacceptable. But Megan, thank you for replying so promptly to my questions, and I wonder if they can provide some guidance. And another matter that has been drawn to my attention is whether or not this will affect developer contributions going forward.
Okay, Megan.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just some quick facts on this to ensure everyone is aware of the situation, and Councillor Fletcher's done a great job of outlining that as well. So this is under the Urban Development Act, as Councillor Fletcher has said. It's an opportunity for Kaingaora as an urban development agency to use that act and to create what is called a specified development project, which has a long process, and the first part of that process is to do an investigation as to whether or not any particular area should be considered as a specified development project. So the instructions that the ministers have given to KO, to Kaingaora, relate to that first step of investigation. So no decision has yet been made that those powers under the Urban Development Act would be used. It's the investigation as to whether or not that should occur. And there's a bunch of process that happens obviously after that. And so it relates to the light rail corridor, and it relates to the urban development elements of the light rail corridor. And Kaingaora have been given till July 2024 to undertake this investigation. So I think certainly from my perspective, we're just, as Councillor Fletcher said, we didn't know anything about it as staff. None of the sponsors knew, and so it was a surprise to us all. I guess there's three questions for me. I don't know what problem the government is trying to solve going through this process. I don't know what concerns they have about the existing light rail process around urban development, whether it is not going to achieve some kind of outcomes that they're wanting. I don't know, it's not clear to me. Secondly, why do this at this point? This could have been done a couple of years ago if that's what they wished, or at least a conversation with the sponsors, Auckland Council being one of them. And then thirdly, what does it mean for our work? So obviously the work that we've been doing in good faith with the company, with central government officials and with KO as well, has been towards a change to the plan to provide the kind of intensification and urban development changes that will be needed to enable that rail, that light rail corridor, and to enable the urban development objectives. So we've been doing that. I don't know what it means yet. We've only just seen it as you have, and so Councillor Hills, as chair of the Planning, Environment and Parks Committee, has asked us to investigate that and to report back through him to you about implications. So I don't have an answer to that. So look, I think I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair. I hope that's helpful.
You'll note, Megan, that the motion is about authorising the mayor to actually represent this council in saying enough.
So yes, no. I have no particular comment on the recommendation. It's very clear. Yeah, I completely understand that. So, but perhaps that's a matter for debate. Yeah.
I could have used other language.
No, you've done very well, I think.
Rio, I've got a further comment on this because light rail is essentially a transport project, but it is becoming a housing project. And I have worked closely with the Minister of Transport, the former Minister of Transport, who has actually, to be fair, really treated Councillor Darby, myself and the Murray sponsors as real partners in this. And unlike the Waitemata Harbour crossing where we weren't remotely involved. But, and the new Minister of Transport, who I've also met, was also, I believe, unaware of this because we discussed this rail corridor and he wasn't at all keen on it being primarily housing driven. It is supposed to be a transport issue with housing side benefits, not a housing benefit with transport side issues. So I'm not a great wordsmith. I would add at the bottom of this that as a result of this that the matter be referred on to the planning committee, but Councillor Darby and myself will also raise this at the next meeting, if there is one, I hope, of the Auckland Light Rail, which is the Auckland Metro Rail at the moment.
Your Worship,
what I like about what you're doing is that it allows me to speak on behalf of the council and saying that enough is enough. Surprises from the Minister of Housing in the South Island telling us what to do here have already caused enough problems. And this is basically not welcome. You know, we have a process which you're going through, which is analysing the light rail options and carefully, not excluding them, making sure there are real options. And I think that the light rail, the trams definitely have some merit. But this is not how you do it. And
Your Worship, I'm happy for you to add that, as long as you add it referred to the planning and also the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, because there are issues around
I think there are issues of
stormwater.
both. I think that, but which is why, in a way, it should be discussed at this level today, and that at some stage or other, both the Planning and the Transport Committee will have it, and there'll be work for Councillor Darby and myself as roles as sponsors, because there's no sense being a sponsor to this if the entire decision making is going to be in the hall rooms of Kāinga Ora in Wellington, and that's just unacceptable. We have got to remind the government that the Council of Auckland Council is a body that represents a third of New Zealand and has to be treated with respect. Simple as that, in my view. It's just unacceptable. So I think as a result of this, rather than a part of your motion, we will ensure that both the Council, Planning and the Transport Committees are kept informed by Megan of any further developments, but I'm happy to take up the option to do what you said. I do have inputs from 4 people, questions or whatever. No, you'd...
Your Worship, just while you're waiting, in terms of historical referencing, because I was on the board of Auckland Transport at the time, the reason that light rail came up in the very first instance was because of bus congestion at the top of Simon Street. It emerged originally as a transport solution. It was not about urban redevelopment. So it's really important that we put that historical context in and around light rail, because it
Okay,
seems to have become confused.
I'm going to call a plumbing recess for 10 minutes for a number of reasons. This was a minor matter which has become a bit more major, and I have got a list of people who want to talk to it. You'll still get your opportunity, but Sandra needs some a little bit of time to organise the processes to make sure they're correct. We'd like you to come and see Sandra during this period of time to make sure you've got the wording of yours correct. And we will probably have to have a little motion that we extend time to allow this to become something that wasn't necessarily on the... We don't need that yet. I'm just having a 10-minute break.
I guess, Mayor, I guess for that break, and if I could speak just briefly, because I did speak about this with you and your office and Megan yesterday about this coming through planning environment at parks today, and I talked to Councillor Fletcher about that this morning too. I guess my concern is, there needs to be, if this is going to go up emotions as opposed to a letter from you, which was what we were discussing anyway, and a process of
That's why
advice.
we need the break. We're just going to work that process
I just
out.
need, but on the table, I think needs to be around the notices of requirement. There needs to be a few other things, and how it relates to item 9 and 10 on our agenda today, which is what 3 is. So I think this is why we're getting ourselves tied up into, we don't know the implications. I agree with Councillor Fletcher and yourself. I don't think that this is a terrible process, and we should not have been surprised, and we don't even know if this is the best option for the corridor, and because we weren't asked, not even our officials. So, but I think there's got to be quite a lot more added to this, which is why it would have been good to have the advice first at planning